choo-choo!
Get your tickets!
All aboard! The Hot Mess Express
Get your
is
tickets.
leaving soon. Get your tickets! Get your tickets! All aboard! The Hot Mess Express is about to leave the station, headed towards Dysfunction Junction. Now with stops in Denial and Crazy Town.
Hi, my name is Jax and I'm an artist, crafter, maker, and today we're going to go over a piece that I created in chaos, so to speak. Sometimes our lives are not always routine. Sometimes people around you or even you may be going through something that causes chaos. Well, I created this piece over the course of 3 weeks and I couldn't get it done any sooner. My life was just kind of ridiculous, and sometimes when we're under a ton of stress, our art reflects it. Some people will even say, oh, I can't create, I'm too stressed out. I think that when you are stressed out, it's probably the best time to create, because at least you're still doing something that calms you down and gives you that sense of yourself. I pulled out a canvas that I had laying around for about a year. I had placed a bunch of thick glossy matte sculpture gel on the piece, a bunch of acrylic paint, and then I pulled out my flexible modeling paste with a Tim Holtz stencil and I placed that onto the canvas. Once that was on the piece and dried, I took some Tim Holtz Distress Oxide inks in multiple colors and I used a baby wipe to spread it upon the canvas. Once that was complete, I kind of let it sit for like 6 months until I had a really bad day. I grabbed it and I took every bit of paint that I could find and I put it all over the canvas and I put some saran wrap on top of that, squished it around and let it sit for a couple days, not knowing that I put plastic wrap on it to keep the ink from squirting out. It didn't allow it to dry and I had to let it sit out even longer. Once it was completely dry, I took a stencil, I made some bricks, and then I also took my Tim Holtz alphabet stencil and put a quote on there, think for yourself. I took out some Hampton Art stencils and stamps with a rock and roll theme. I pulled out some Strathmore Bristol Smooth paper, put it in my Mini Misty, arranged the stamps on the Mini Misty door, and started using my Momenta black archival ink to get a really good impression. I used the Mini Misty multiple times just to make sure I did get a sharp impression. Once I had that completed, I took the matching dies and I lined them up with the stamps and I taped that onto the paper using some painter's tape.
Think for yourself! Think for yourself! Think for yourself! Think for yourself! Dude, are you singing that? Really?
Once they were cut out, I took my alcohol markers and I colored each one of the pieces and finished it off with my Wink of Stella. Once the Wink of Stella and the alcohol markers were dry, some of them I used my liquid pearls to make a little bit more dimension, and then others I decided to use my glossy accents and allowed that to dry. I really like how it adds a lot of dimension to the piece. I have a skull, a guitar, a Pepsi bottle, or it could be a beer bottle, whatever you want to call it, a skateboard.
When we all think alike, no one thinks very much. Can you remember who you were before the world told you who you should be? Thinking for yourself may cause a sudden outbreak of independence. To find yourself, you must think for yourself. The most courageous act is still to think for yourself aloud. Are you a sheep? You are not alone. Don't be a sheeple. Think for yourself. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. I mean it.
Once those were all completed, I arranged it on the canvas, trying to decide what I wanted to do with it. This whole project was kind of a hot mess. I'd pull out some liquid pearls in the silver and I outlined the think for yourself.
When all else fails and you didn't think you could create anything worse, Jax enters the room. Dare to think for yourself. Always trust yourself. Think before you act. Act for yourself. Speak for yourself. Be yourself. Few are those who see with their own eyes and feel with their own hearts. Albert Einstein. Question authority, but don't be crazy about it. I want you to think for yourself. Think for yourself. Make me. That's my point exactly.
I also took out a Tim Holtz ruler stencil and used my Distress Oxide inks to put some more dimension on the piece. I pulled out a bunch of my ribbons and string, and I'm using my Distress Oxide leftover ink on my sponge, and I'm just rubbing that on the white string just so it's not drastically white. I wanted it a little bit grungy.
When all else fails, fight like a girl.
Once I had that placed on the piece, I took out my super heavy gloss gel, and I've had this gloss gel for many, many, many years, and it is dang near dry in the container. So I really had a hard time pulling it out of the container. So you can see here, I'm literally using pliers to get it out of the container, and then I broke it up. Since it's half dry and half wet, I kind of just use it as chunks, and then, which is almost like foam tape, and I've used big globs to try and use it up and add a little bit more dimension to the piece.
Break free from what society believes that you should be. One person's thoughts about you does not constitute who you are. There is nothing that anybody else can do or say about you that can take away your own self-power. You decide what you think of yourself. You decide, and then love that person. Love your own self.
I cut the ribbon off the edge of the canvas, and I'm going through the different pieces of ephemera that I have in my stash, and I'm trying to decide what I want to put on here. At this point, I thought that this was going to be a few die cuts and a few signs, but as the weeks went on and the more of the crazy in my life came out, well, so did the crazy in this piece. I took out my crystal nouveau drops. I started decorating anything that I could, even if it looks like crazy, and I placed things all over the canvas using my Elmer's glue to make sure that the string doesn't pop off, and pulling out different gems, cardboard cutouts. I also take out my Tim Holtz distress paints, and I place that randomly throughout the piece, putting drips and blobs and whatever. You can imagine like a graffiti alley. This is kind of the feeling that I wanted. It doesn't have to make sense. Life doesn't make sense. We don't have to have our art make sense. It can just be to keep your hands busy, to keep your mind occupied. I take out a pair of glasses thinking that that's going to give it a little bit of an intellectual feel. As a whole society, we kind of follow the person ahead of us, allow the television to tell us how to think at times. We are kind of raised to go with the flow. It's easier to have somebody else formulate an opinion for ourselves because it's a struggle at times to articulate what we're truly thinking or feeling. And I think it's important, not just for women, but for men as well, to allow yourself to step back, look at the big picture. Don't concentrate on the most upfront item in front of you. Concentrate on the big picture. As I move through this piece, I've added unicorns and frames, puffy hearts, puffy dots, anything that you can imagine this piece has on it. It's just so ridiculous. I can't even believe it. But sometimes you just have to work with what you have in front of you and create something that is a little chaotic. Where do I think that this could possibly hang? I think this could hang in my future art studio if I ever get one. I would have it in a corner and proudly display it because sometimes art doesn't make sense and sometimes art is just for you to understand. Do I think I could sell this piece?
No, maybe at a garage sale.
For like 5 cents.
And then somebody would talk you down to just giving it to them? Yeah.
Something like that.
Is that a unicorn?
But it was fun to create, and it did do the job of keeping me occupied, which is the best thing to do when you're having some trouble is just work through it. You can do anything you put your mind to. Even if it's creating a hot mess like I did.
Bless this hot mess.
And forcing yourself to finish it. Because honestly, there's so many times I just wanted to put this thing in the garbage, but I didn't. And then I was like, no, I'm not going to record it. No, I'm not going to put it on the internet for everybody to see what a crazy mess I made. No, this is what I made. There are reasons I did it. Just think for yourself.
Who cares what everybody else thinks? Fight like hell to do what you need to do for you. Because nobody else is going to do it. Nobody.
Sometimes we just have to power through and share those opinions and do the things that we really want to do for ourselves. Like creating a hot freaking mess.
If it's gonna be a mess, it might as well be a hot mess. I'll see your hot mess and I'll raise you a walking disaster. And the Hot Mess Award goes to Jax from What the Craft Jax. Yay! I'm not always a hot mess. Some days I'm probably more like a lukewarm clutter. Thanks for taking a ride with me on the Hot Mess Express. We're now letting you off on Dysfunction Junction. Unicorn Road is coming up if you need to get off there. Just watch out for the falling glitter. Lots of glitter. You may need some safety glasses. This girl I know got a bunch of glitter in her eyes. She had this huge eye infection, was out of work for a week. True story. Lots of glitter.
Thanks for joining me today. If you like what you see on this channel, consider subscribing because I'd love to have you as a viewer. Until next time, love you guts. Bye!